Hi there, it's Sarah from Inspire Tarot. Welcome to the channel. See what message the Spirit has for us today. So, the Six of Swords is a card about moving on to calmer waters. Which often really means that we've released some baggage in the mind and that we're kind of moving on, which is a good thing. Yeah, I like to think that we're moving on from calmer waters means that we've just been through a difficult time. We've been through a Five of Swords where we're feeling very defeated within the mind, and then we've come through it and it's time to move away, time to release the baggage, time to grow, and that we can process the difficult emotions and move on to something better. It might be we might still be feeling quite shaken up and need this gentle boat ride just to bring us back to ourselves. I think quite often when we go through a difficult, emotional, challenging time, we can feel as if we're a bit like we've been hit by a bus. Our whole body can feel affected, shaken up. And the Spirit just wants us to be gentle with ourselves and rest, do whatever we need to take care of ourselves. The Ten of Wands is a sign that we've been very overburdened in the mind. Maybe we've been over-responsible for other people, for their emotions. We're feeling like their happiness and their wants and needs are important. I think quite often what happens with many of us is that we think that if we can make the other person happy, then we can be happy. And we put the focus too much on the external. And even though it can feel quite brutal when this happens, it's just a lesson from the universe to say that we've overextended ourselves, that we haven't listened well enough to our inner guidance and our purpose. Our purpose is to know how we feel all the time, to constantly evaluate it rather than just tolerate it and keep going until we get to a breaking point where we just feel like we've got too much to juggle and we can't cope. We feel over-responsible and exhausted. And whenever we put too much of our energy outside of ourselves, then the universe will give us this lesson. It's like we'll create this discomfort and we'll be forced to look at it, be forced to reevaluate what's realistic and what we can do and what we can't do, and have a look at where we're being over-responsible. Let other people be responsible for themselves. You just be responsible for tuning to how you feel and what your wants and needs are. Quite often with the Seven of Cups can mean that we're very distracted by external things. The ego's managed to convince us that salvation is in the physical form, and then we just need to get the right configuration of things. But the Spirit wants us to remember that this is always a trap, and to not fall into the trap of idolatry and thinking that something outside of us can bring us peace, and just bringing us back to the remembrance that the kingdom of heaven is within us. So I think with these cards, it's essentially very much an exercise in learning to see where we're giving our power away, where we're looking for solace in something external, and to bring ourselves back to the mind. And whenever we don't do that, we're going to feel disappointment and regret. Whenever we make an external idol, we feel disappointed because we've fallen for the ego's belief that something outside of ourselves can fill us up and satisfy us. and then we feel duped and we feel upset again, and we seem to make this mistake over and over. It doesn't feel good. I think sometimes it's all too easy to fall into a pattern of feeling very sorry for ourselves and like we're the victim and that we're stuck in a pattern that we can't get out of. But that's not true. So yeah, we need to look at things from a more positive viewpoint, and we get that. Remember that there's 2 upright cups in this card. There's 3 of them that are tipped over, but 2 of them are upright. And the Fool is showing us that if we let go of the story, if we let go of the issue, then we can be the Fool again. We can be carefree and have a blank slate and a fresh new start. And actually we can do this in any moment, and we need to do it repeatedly to move forward in an open-hearted way and not be attached to external things, to be more attached internally to our to how we feel and what we want. And essentially what we want is to just be more anchored in ourselves, to love ourselves more, and to trust in the divine more. Two of Wands. So the Two of Wands is very much a card about expansion, where we feel as if we want more. And every time we look outside of ourselves and we feel dissatisfied, then it reminds us that we need to look within again, look for the goodness within us. Because quite often we will reflect our own, or project our own light onto something external, and then see it as if the power is out there, or the happiness is out there, and it's not out there. It's within us. So the Seven of Swords is a card of deception, about what we're avoiding. What are we avoiding looking at within ourselves? Because that's the ticket to setting ourselves free. Because the things that we avoid them because in the past we felt as if they got us in trouble, but we need to understand that it wasn't the situation that got us in trouble, it was the way that we perceived it from our distorted perspective. And then if we stay in that distorted perspective, if we have that negative belief, then we're just going to experience the same pattern over and over, and we're kind of refueling it. So we need to look at our avoidance and ask the Spirit for help and move in the direction of facing the things within us that feel difficult over and over. And we are always moving forwards, whether we realise it or not. So we need to look at whereabouts we've given our power away and where we feel resentment towards another person. And usually we resent them because they're not giving us what we want. And they're not giving us what we want because we don't feel worthy of it. And then we get that plays out on the screen and we don't like it. But because we're the control panel, we have to change that from within us. So the external world is really just a reflection of what's going on within us. If we don't like it, then we need to change internally by loving ourselves more, giving ourselves the comfort and the compassion and the kindness and the upliftment that we're looking for from the outside, the attention and the care. We need to look at our lack beliefs and our stories, and really catch ourselves when we're stuck in these stories where we give our power away and project our guilt and shame onto other people and make them responsible for the way we feel, because no one's responsible for the way we feel. We are. And we just need to look at ourselves with love. I read a cute thing this morning where it just kept saying that if we add salt to a small amount of liquid, then it can taste revolting. But if we added salt to a little bit of salt to a bath, then we wouldn't notice it as much. and that we just need to, because of the concentration, we need to just keep putting a bit more love in, a bit more love in, and eventually there is more love in. And Temperance is a card about balance, about learning to balance. We're constantly learning to balance. We have to balance our masculine and feminine energies, which is about giving and receiving and doing and resting. We're constantly refining, and the Spirit is constantly helping us to do this. So we really need to focus on our own inner peace and what brings us inner peace. And we know that looking outside of ourselves never brings us peace. Looking to the future or the past never brings us peace. So we need to come back to the present moment. We need to calm the mind down and focus on love and sanity. And that can very quickly bring us back to a place of peace. Whenever we spiral out or get stuck in patterns of thinking that the world is ending, we've opened Pandora's box, and it can feel horrific. And especially if we're going through some sort of ego backlash. But as soon as we quiet the mind and remind ourselves that peace exists beyond the concepts and the conflict in the mind, and just quieten ourselves down and come back to it without needing to distract ourselves with anything. Quite often the silence and the quietness that we avoid is the thing actually that we need the most, and the thing that will bring us back to the peace and the comfort that we're looking for. It always says in the Course that we have to go through the darkness to the light, and where we don't want to go, that's where we'll find Him. And it's true. We are worthy of that love and peace. The Page of Swords, and the Wheel of Fortune, and the Queen of Swords. So yeah, the Page of Swords is like a young or an immature part of ourselves that's trying to balance the mind, trying to master the mind. And quite often we only master this mind by making mistakes over and over. But we have to forgive ourselves for these mistakes and learn from them. And it does require a lot of focus to do this. So all change is fated. We are destined to heal all of our patterns and all of our impurities in the mind. Sometimes people think that their purpose is something in form, but the purpose is always just to accept the atonement and to heal. And quite often for many of us to do that, we need to be very uncompromising with ourselves, and we need to speak up. Many of us have mastered being kind to other people, but we need to learn to be kind to ourselves and balance that out. And be more discerning with attuning to wisdom and respecting ourselves, communicating when we don't feel as if we've been treated well, or we want something to be different, or we perceive something a certain way. We need to share that, let other people know how we feel and where we stand. And the Queen of Swords is very much a straight shooter. She'll speak her truth. Justice. Yeah, the Justice card is always reminding us that divine justice is always at play, and that the justice of God is that everyone is treated the same. Everyone is given the same. We all play the same game on the level of the mind, and that we're always held accountable for what we do and what we bring. We're responsible for correcting our imbalances, and as we do that, we do get to reap the rewards of the changes that we make. We get to live in a different experience, and we're always rewarded for what we get right, in that we feel happier, and we tend to call forth gentler experiences, more loving experiences, a reflection of what we've mastered. And when we don't, we get a lesson instead. So we're always being helped, and we're always being supported by the divine. Divine justice is a beautiful thing, really, because there's no punishment in the divine justice system. In our human justice system, we get punished when we make a mistake, whereas divine justice really just is more like a rehabilitation kind of approach. It's very much wanting to help us heal. And sometimes tough love can be, you know, how justice works out. Especially if we don't learn a lesson, and I find that when we don't learn a lesson, it just gets harder and harder until we really have to look at it. We really do have to look out for ourselves first before we look out for others. We can't bring our best selves to anything until we put ourselves first, put God first. God will help us. I think quite often we get taught, we can fall into a pattern of thinking that, you know, that it's our job to serve justice to somebody else, but it doesn't really work that way. We need to just focus on ourselves and our own path and our own healing, and let other people take care of themselves, and we can love them and support them as they make their own growth and changes, or don't make their own growth and changes. But the onus is on us, because the more healed we are, the more grace and compassion we have for other people, and the less we need external validation, then they can just be as they are. And that's the most loving thing that we can give to anyone, to let them be as they are, to support them by holding them in true empathy. So yeah, I think it's just an endless process of refining ourselves internally, seeing our worth, vouching for ourselves, mastering the mind, mastering balance, looking at our weaknesses and trusting and remembering that the goodness is within, the kingdom of heaven is within, and that we're always needing to learn how to balance and keep shifting and move along when we've outgrown something. Right, okay, that's my little reading for today. I love you all. I'll see you again. Bye.